Good morning on this Sunday, August 16th, and welcome to the Georgia Gang. It was a run-up election with far-reaching implications. For the first time in 24 years, Fulton County will have a new district attorney. Also, she's controversial, some say racist and anti-Semitic. Marjorie Taylor Greene is poised to become the new congresswoman from Georgia's 14th congressional district. And Governor Brian Kemp drops his lawsuit against the city of Atlanta's mask mandate. Theron, Phil, Janelle, and Kathy are all here joining us from their homes. The debate and discussion begin right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
Fani Willis will soon make history. She'll become Fulton County's first female district attorney after a landslide victory against longtime incumbent Paul Howard.
I came with pride, and I'm leaving with pride.
It was a brutal political battle between Paul Howard, who was voted into office in 1996, and his former employee, Fani Willis. While Howard was answering to ethics charges and complaints of sexual harassment, Willis said her victory was also about voters not feeling safe in their communities.
We will do what's right every time and all the time. Whether the news cameras are on us or not, or we are handling a case that no one knows but us and that family.
Final tally, Fani Willis 72% to Paul Howard's 28%. Theron, wow, the voters of Fulton County have spoken loud and clear. I'm going to start with you and get your thoughts on this race.
Yes, the voters of Fulton County did speak loud and clear, and you've got to give a lot of credit to Fani Willis, and I want to congratulate her for her win. She ran a really good campaign, she was well financed, and she really built the right coalition within the county. The numbers reflect that. But at the end of the day, I think that they've got to come together because, as she mentioned in her remarks, public safety is paramount. We must come together to deal with some of the issues that we face around crime in this county. But ultimately, listen, it was a change election, and not just Paul Howard as an incumbent, but many other incumbents were defeated all throughout the metro area. And so she took advantage of that momentum of this change election.
Phil, I expected these numbers to tighten a little bit, but Fani Willis stayed above 70% the entire night.
Well, I tell you what, Fani Willis was the great unifier in the city of Atlanta and in Fulton County, and that's something that we needed. Paul Howard had horribly abused his office, and I'm glad to see that Fani Willis is very highly qualified. Bear in mind, there's still a criminal investigation ongoing with Howard in his office with regard to this phony nonprofit that he set up and was paying himself. So he's still not out of the legal hot waters. And observers are speculating that Howard could be indicted in the near future. But in the meantime, I think in the name of public safety, thank goodness this anti-police district attorney has been kicked out of office.
Janelle, voters were clearly paying attention in this race to the ethics charges against Howard, the GBI investigation to the charities he ran, the sexual harassment allegations. Voters are clearly paying attention to politics, it seems, this time around. Just your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's interesting. I think we all kind of expected these results, and I think it's important to pay attention to what it represents. And that's that, like you said, the voters are paying attention, that they are listening. I find it interesting that in a district that is majority minority, when we have, major media outlets saying that these communities want to defund police and that don't want police presence, I think it shows in this case right here, this is a perfect example, that it shows that these are people who do care about having safety. They do care about law and order. And I think that that's what Fani represents, is that a balance across the board and not just kind of yielding towards one particular area. So I look forward to seeing what she's going to do, and I congratulate her as well.
Kathy, Theron had mentioned this, alluded to this, that this was an election about change. We also saw it in the Fulton County Sheriff's Office with the defeat of Ted Jackson. What does this say about heading into November?
It's a tough year to be an incumbent. That's what it says. Not only did we see that in the Fulton County races, but we saw longtime Representative Michelle Henson and longtime Representative Sharon Beasley Teague lose their primary runoffs this year.
Phil, Georgia is expecting more than 5 million voters to turn out for November, and although this runoff had really light turnout, we heard of very few problems. What do you think about all of that?
Well, it was another good trial run. I live in Fulton County, and as we have discussed on the panel for a long time, Fulton County is one of the big problem spots. And just to always remind our viewers, yes, the Secretary of State has oversight and training responsibilities and other things, but it's all 159 counties that actually manage the elections and bring in the poll workers. And so let's keep an eye on the poll worker situation. The Secretary of State recently called for 5,000 more new ones. I think we've got about 3,000, which really you have to be training these people. I did hear some problems during the Democratic runoff in some sections of Atlanta. Some of the poll workers were ill-equipped, but there wasn't the problems that we had back on June 9th, thank goodness. So we have to keep our fingers crossed, and I am glad the Secretary of State is doing an online absentee ballot portal where you can request an absentee ballot online. I think that'll cut back on some of the confusion we had in June.
Kathy, back to you, and let's talk about that, because we now know the Secretary of State is creating a portal for voters to apply for their absentee ballots. Let me get your thoughts on that idea. I mean, is that enough, or do you think he should still send applications to all registered voters, even though he says he can't afford it?
Well, I do think he should send them out to all registered voters. It would make sure that people who don't have access to the internet, and we know there are lots of communities that don't here in Georgia, just by evidence of the schools that are trying to find ways to get kids connected. So we have people who can't do that. You can go online to the My Voter page on the Secretary of State's website right now and apply for your absentee ballot through that, but it does require that you print it off and mail it in and do some other things that, again, are hard for people who are challenged with technology for a variety of reasons. It would be a lot smoother to mail them, and I think it would be much more helpful, because we are going to have problems in November. The primary turnout is very, very light, even though a lot of people voted by mail.
Janelle, your thoughts on this portal and, absentee ballots?
Yeah, so I actually like this. I remember there was an argument around whether or not people could afford 55-cent stamps. So I think that this is now going to eliminate that discussion. I do like the idea of being able to, go online to request your ballot. I think it makes it easier to track. It makes it easier for you to know who's getting these ballots, so that when names are coming in from people who are passed away or from people who no longer live here, you can now match that up. I don't think we should lead this into voting online 100%. I think we should be cautious of that. But I do want to see something that happens that helps family members who have other family members that are in nursing homes, that are relying on people that work around there to put their ballots in the mail and all that. So I want to see something that will address that issue as well. But I like this idea going forward.
Theron, just your thoughts. Is the Secretary of State doing enough, and is he working with counties across Georgia enough?
Well, Lori, we would be remiss if we did not mention what Fulton County was able to correct. Things are getting better, and huge shout out to Chairman Rob Pitts, who really got a lot of earned media. He really took this on and saying, hey, I'm going to make sure that voters feel comfortable and that the elections are secure. And also big shout out to the Atlanta Hawks, Lori. I mean, they have the world's largest early voting facility. And so I think what you saw is a huge number of new poll workers. And thank you to all the new poll workers. Many of my friends and colleagues signed up to be poll workers this time around. I do think the Secretary of State is heading in the right direction. I do think he's making the right decision by working directly with the counties to make sure that we're as prepared as we can be for November.
And early voting is just around the corner. Thanks, everyone. Well, coming up, Georgia's 14th congressional district race makes national headlines this week and will probably do so for months to come. We'll discuss next.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
She's been described as racist, anti-Semitic, anti-Muslim, but Marjorie Taylor Greene is poised to become the new congresswoman from Georgia's 14th congressional district. Janelle, I'll start with you, because President Trump tweeted this week she is a future Republican star. Do you agree?
So I do agree that she has the potential. And the reason why I say that is because I watched her virtual town hall, and I watched it because I personally don't know her very, very well. And a lot of Republicans in the state don't know her very well as well. So I watched it to see what would be her take on the issues. And I felt like she did a really, really good job on the issues. Here's my concern, though. I don't think that she is getting ahead of the negative publicity fast enough. I think that she needs to pay attention to the fact that once she is in that seat, she now represents the district and the voters and the makeup of that district. And if you don't want to send the wrong message, you have to correct that. You also represent the party. And I think it's highly important that if you are being called a racist, or if you have anything out there that leans towards that direction, whether that's what you meant or not, it needs to be addressed. Let's not make this a thing where you think it's okay to represent the party in this way.
Farron, is she a gift to Democrats in Georgia?
Well, she's definitely a gift, and we got to make sure that Democrats manage it properly. I mean, this is bad for the Georgia GOP. I think Janelle and Phil have done the best that they can on this show to really figure out how the Republicans can be a little bit more inclusive, being more open to bringing in a different voter base. But this is nothing but a further race to the right. I mean, you saw national establishment Republicans, not just from Georgia, but from all over, calling her out for some of her racist comments. There was a lot of extremism going on in this primary. And so now the establishment in the Republican Party has lost, and you have the president endorsing this type of behavior. And so for those moderate Republicans out there who are going to be in tough elections in November and trying to expand the GOP, this was not good for them. And I think ultimately you're going to see her become more and more boastful because she has the president on her side. But ultimately this was a bad win for Republicans in Georgia.
Phil, Greene's campaign told the AJC's Greg Bluestein to leave her victory party after he tweeted out what she said to her supporters, calling House Speaker Nancy Pelosi the B word. And she blames the liberal media for all the negative attention. But when she says things, and I'm quoting here, blacks have equal rights, slavery is over, does she represent the new Republican Party?
Well, I would say that Marjorie Greene is part of a Republican coalition. That's a heavily conservative district. I don't know her that well, but I have had the chance to interview and talk with her. I think she has potential, like Janelle says, but I think she needs to work on her messaging, and I think she's learned some lessons. And you don't call any politician, female politician, male politician, names like that. That's outrageous. They've had hiccups. For example, Democrat Congressman Hank Johnson, he called Jews termites a couple years ago. I think he learned a lesson from that. And you've got a reference point on the left, like a Hank Johnson, or you've got a reference point on the right, like Marjorie Greene now. I think she's learned some lessons. She needs to do far better on her messaging. You just can't paint with a broad brush. Yes, you should counterpunch, but I think she'll probably, barring any unforeseen circumstances, be representing that congressional district.
Kathy, Greene does have a Democratic opponent, but this is a district where President Trump won 75% of the vote 4 years ago. Several conservative Republicans, as Theron mentioned, have condemned her remarks, and they're really distancing themselves. But what happens when she goes to Washington? And what should Republicans do? Because you have folks like Congressman Doug Collins, Senator Kelly Loeffler, who are running. They congratulate her, but they also need those supporters too.
Well, listen, let me be really clear. She doesn't have to work on her messaging. She needs to work on her beliefs, because she's saying what she thinks, and she's saying how she's going to act when she gets up in Washington. I think the Republican caucus in Washington is going to be faced with a real challenge. I'd be surprised if they put her on any, if many, committees, because of her ability to do tremendous damage to herself and the party and her country. And she's not a gift to anyone, because we are so challenged here in Georgia right now. The way people view us, the number of times we've been on the front page of national and international newspapers for mishandling of the COVID crisis and other kinds of things. This just doesn't bode well for our state, and just another reason why we need to figure figure out a way to draw fair and impartial districts so that we can have more competition and things like this don't happen.
Theron, it's been a really big political week, and I want to switch gears. Mayor Bottoms gets a big speaking role this week at the virtual Democratic National Convention, but did not get the VP nod, and neither did Stacey Abrams. Do you think Kamala Harris passes the test for Georgia's Democratic voters?
Senator Kamala Harris was an excellent choice. It was a historic choice, and absolutely, Lori, we'll be able to benefit from this choice in Georgia. I mean, listen, I think that you look at what Mayor Bottoms sent out and also Leader Abrams, they were immediately on Twitter and social media congratulating Senator Harris for this pick, and also making sure that we focus on the #1 goal, and that is to win in November. And so ultimately, I think you're going to see Leader Abrams and also Mayor Bottoms be key surrogates, not just in Georgia, but all over the South and all over the U.S. for us. I mean, but back to Senator Harris, to be the first woman of color, the first African-American woman to be chosen as a VP candidate shows that there's a true difference between where the Biden-Harris campaign is going, which is talking about the future, versus the Trump-Pence that's really stuck in the past.
Janelle, weigh in on that. Is that the future ticket? Is that the future of America? Weigh in on this.
No, I'm be honest. I'm not impressed. I'm completely underwhelmed, to be honest. I think that, you know, when the way it all happened is what I think turned a lot of people off. I feel like the people who are in support and are like diehard supporters of this ticket are people who are going to vote for Biden whether he put Big Bird as his vice president or not. I think there are people who are really on the fence because they don't understand how to reconcile a lot of the contradictions from, you know, her labeling him as a segregationist, believing his accusers, and now he's what's best for the country. And I think people are really confused about that, not to mention the 1,500 individuals that were locked up due to possession of weed, as she went on interviews and joked about smoking weed in college to music that hadn't came out yet. So I think that at the end of the day, people are a little confused as to who she really is. What does she represent? I don't think we should label every man as a misogynist just because they are questioning her. I think there's a lot of different directions this can go into. But I mean, and to be quite honest, as much as I have a lot of critiques about the city of Atlanta, one thing I do know for sure is that Mayor Bottoms has a loyalty, or have a really loyal base when it comes to the African American community. And I think that if they picked Kamala Harris thinking that she's gonna really reel in the African American base like Obama did, I don't think that she's going to be the one.
All right, unfortunately, we need to leave it there. Thank you, guys. Well, coming up, Governor Brian Kemp drops his lawsuit against the city of Atlanta over the mask mandate. We'll discuss what that means straight ahead.
Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
Governor Brian Kemp reverses course and drops his lawsuit against the city of Atlanta's mask mandate. Kathy, we'll start with you on this blog. This week we saw 2 days where the number of deaths due to the coronavirus hit more than 100 here in Georgia. The governor is encouraging masks, but not requiring them, and not even in schools. He's leaving that up to the locals to decide. What are your thoughts?
Same time I'm answering. Well, my thoughts are this. We're in a mess. Even the president's people are starting to get worried about what's happening here in Georgia. The governor doesn't seem to have any strategy whatsoever, right? He's a barrel of contradictions. Schools should wear masks, but cities can't wear masks. You know, we're not supposed to wear masks because we don't want to dictate what happens on private property, but we have all kinds of health department rules and other kinds of laws that dictate what happens on private property. The bottom line is we are #1 in the country in the per capita new cases. That's not good. It's not going to go away fast. It's not going to go away by all of these contradictory messages that aren't good public health.
Phil, what does the governor do here? And Kathy says he doesn't have a strategy. What are your thoughts on that? Does he have a strategy, and what is it?
Well, he does. I think Kathy's attack is very unfair. You can agree with some, disagree or agree on some things, but the strategy is trying to keep businesses reopened as much as possible in this state so we can have an economic recovery and stop people from going bankrupt and getting depressed and turning to drugs and suicide. That's the flip side of the coin. Now, yes, I do agree with Kathy that we've definitely got problems. If you want to call it a mess, it is a mess no matter who would be governor and what your political philosophy is. For example, let's try to keep the schools open while following public safety guidelines. Let's try to keep businesses open. And of course, it goes back with Governor Kemp and with Mayor Bottoms of Atlanta. The feud continues. We tape, of course, this broadcast on a Friday. The governor's going to issue a new executive order Saturday. We really can't comment on it right now at this point as to what that's going to be with regard to trying to keep businesses open. That's been a big problem, let alone the mask problem that Kathy talks about. Yes, you can tussle over that, but the fact that we're going to lose some businesses in all over the state if we don't keep this balance that is the Kemp strategy.
Theron, talk about that balance. I mean, it's kind of the age-old question. It's public health and still keeping the economy going. What do you think the governor should do at this point?
Well, I think the first thing is that the governor knew that they were in a stalemate. I mean, if you just look at the comments and you look at the stories that were written this week, that there were negotiations that were going on, but they were not going anywhere. And so he dropped the lawsuit. And so I think at the end of the day, everyone on the Georgia Gang panel, we all agree that people should wear masks. The challenge is that should it be mandated? And so with this lawsuit being dropped, it allows cities and mayors to continue the process of putting mask mandates locally in place. But ultimately, look, like Phil said, we got to wait and see what the governor comes out with. We tape on Fridays. But I just really hope that now we can really utilize our resources and our time to making sure that we're protecting lives, we're saving lives, we're protecting our children as they continue to try to figure out this mess that's trying to go back to school.
Janelle, this week, President Trump's own coronavirus task force said that Georgia is not doing enough to stop the spread of COVID-19, strongly recommending a mask mandate and that bars, restaurants, and some of the highest risk categories should be closed. Should the governor be listening to the White House's recommendations?
So I think that the governor should take in consideration all recommendations. I don't think he should make a decision based off of one or the other, because it's something that it requires a lot of different perspectives, and I think that's what he's doing. There is a delicate balance between our small businesses and the survival of them and the health of the people. And I do think that, you know, wearing a mask is a personal responsibility. I feel like the mandating millions of people to do something that they should be doing anyway it should not be the responsibility of the governor or any leader of that matter. It should be the responsibility of that individual. So I do think that he is, you know, like I said, playing a delicate balance here. I think he's doing the best he absolutely can. I know he cares about the state and the people that reside here. So I'm looking forward to see how this plays out. But I really want to encourage people to take personal responsibility. You can wear a mask without being told.
And especially for our kiddos going back to school, they can wear a mask. Also, me telling them to do so as a parent. Thank you all so much. Coming up, we will have winners and losers. Stay tuned.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
All right, Phil, we'll start with you this week.
Thank you, Lori. I want to make a winner the Police Protection Act that was passed by the Georgia General Assembly. No thanks, though, to the liberal Democrats. This Police Protection Act actually puts on extra penalties and jail time to these radicals who and criminals who attack and vilify police officers. I was astounded to see that except for one Democrat, all the Democrats in the State House of Representatives voted against the Police Protection Act. That wouldn't have happened even 5 to 10 years ago. I am shocked, and I hope every Republican hits their Democratic opponents over the head. They ought to apologize for that. But some good news. I have a winner. The state just got a AAA bond rating, and it's due to good financial management, and thanks to Governor Kemp and his team. And this really helps us with regard to bringing in new industries. Only one of 9 states. That's quite a record and an honor.
Over to Theron. We have about 2 minutes left in the show, Theron.
All right, my first winner is going to be Senator Kamala Harris. Great pick by former Vice President Joe Biden. My second winner is going to be former Chief of Corrections in the city of Atlanta, Pat Labatt, for winning the primary this week. And he's going to go on to be the sheriff-elect because there's no Republican. And a big shout out to his wife, Jackie Labatt, who worked very hard in the campaign. And lastly, rest in peace to Mary Harris, who passed away this week, lost her battle with cancer. She was a long-time Georgia Department of Transportation employee and was a dear friend.
Oh, okay. And Janelle, over to you.
Okay, well, my winner goes to President Trump, Jared Kushner, and the Trump administration on the historic peace deal between Israel and the UAE during a time where we have so many that are in support of the unrest. It's exciting to see us moving towards peace in the Middle East. And lastly, Senator Loeffler on the 26% lead that she's taken in the polls over Collins and Warnock, who are both at 17%.
And we should always mention that you are the honorary co-chairwoman of that campaign,
Yes.
as Theron is also on the Biden team. And Kathy, over to you.
I'm going to be really quick just to make a couple of announcements. One, we still need a couple thousand poll workers for the November election. Go to the Secretary of State's website or your county election board and volunteer. And go ahead and apply for your absentee ballot now. You don't have to wait for the Secretary of State to put that website up. Go on, get it going, and as soon as you get it, turn it around, because we have a crazy president who's trying to take money away and crash the post office before the election.
All right, those poll workers are definitely winners this week, and also teachers and administrators, whether they are welcoming those kids virtually or in person. We thank you for all your time and your dedication to really kind of flip the switch, and who knows what the year will bring. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we will see you again next week. Bye-bye.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program.